Undercover black investor walks into his own company, shocked when security throws him out. What happens when a man who built an empire with his bare hands decides to step into his own creation? Not as a CEO, not as a boss, but as a stranger. And what if, in that moment, he discovers that the very values he built his company on have been forgotten? It was Saturday morning, just past 10 a.m. The air in Dallas, Texas was already heavy with heat, the kind that clung to your skin and shimmered above the asphalt. In the driver's seat of a black sedan sat Terrence Hall. The world knew him as a success story, the founder of a multimillion-dollar retail empire, a man who had turned a single small store into hundreds across the country. But right now, staring into his rearview mirror, he hardly recognized himself. The reflection that looked back wasn't the polished CEO, who wore tailored suits and spoke in boardrooms filled with glass and steel. This man wore a faded hoodie, loose jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his forehead. His eyes carried something softer, almost vulnerable. He adjusted the brim of his cap with a shaky hand. His pulse thudded in his chest. This isn't about power, he reminded himself. This is about truth. For years, Terrence had believed his company stood for one thing above all: connection. Every customer, no matter their background, mattered. That was the promise he made when he opened his very first store. But lately, complaints had reached his ears. Whispers of poor service, cold treatment, even outright bias. Each time managers brushed it off. Just isolated incidents, sir. Nothing serious. Yet something inside Terrence told him otherwise. And so, he decided today would be different. He would strip away the safety net of his title, his wealth, his name. He would walk into one of his own stores as a man no one knew, and he would see for himself. The location he chose wasn't random. It was the first store he had ever opened outside his home state. Years ago, it had been a gamble. If it failed, his dream might have collapsed before it began. But it didn't thrive. It became a symbol of hope. And today, that symbol was about to be tested. Terrence cut the engine and stepped out into the hot parking lot. The sun glared off windshields, forcing him to squint as he slung a weathered canvas bag over his shoulder. All around him, life buzzed. Parents herded kids toward the automatic doors. A teenager zipped past on a skateboard, weaving through parked cars. An older couple shuffled slowly, their shopping list clutched between them. To everyone else, this was just another Saturday. But to Terrence, it felt like the beginning of a trial. He paused at the curb, staring at the bold logo gleaming on the glass storefront. His heart swelled with pride. This was his creation. His vision turned reality. But that pride was quickly buried beneath unease. He whispered under his breath, "Don't look at this as the owner. Look at it as the customer." And with that he stepped forward. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, releasing a rush of chilled air that swept over his skin. The coolness was welcome, but it also carried the sterile smell of cleaning solution and fresh cardboard from unpacked boxes. The store hummed with life. Carts rattled across the tile floor. Somewhere in the distance, a child squealed with laughter. The overhead speakers played a pop song, barely audible over the constant beep of checkout scanners. To the untrained eye, everything seemed normal. Employees in striped uniforms moved briskly through the aisles, some stocking shelves, some chatting with customers, others scanning items at the registers. But Terrence wasn't here to glance over the surface. He was here to look deeper. He paused near a display of brightly colored kitchen appliances, pretending to browse. His eyes wandered, but his focus was sharp. Just a few feet away, a young woman in uniform was speaking kindly to a customer, explaining product details with patience. Her smile looked genuine. Good, Terence thought. That's the kind of service we promised. Then, across the aisle, his attention landed on a different sight. A young man leaning against the counter in the electronics section, phone in hand, thumbs flying across the screen. Terence's pulse quickened. This was his chance to test. He drifted casually toward the electronics section, picking up a pair of headphones from the shelf. He turned the box over in his hands, pretending to study it. The young man glanced up for the briefest moment, then looked right back down at his phone. No greeting. No offer of help. Nothing. Terence gave it time. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Still nothing. A small knot formed in his stomach. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he didn't notice me. He wasn't ready to judge. Not yet. So he put the headphones back, inhaled deeply, and decided to move on. This was only the beginning. Terence adjusted the strap of his canvas bag and moved further down the aisle. His steps were slow, deliberate. To any other shopper, he looked like a man simply browsing. But inside, every sense was heightened. Every detail mattered. He passed a row of televisions flickering the latest football highlights, the colors dancing across his face. A young boy stood pressed against the glass, eyes wide with wonder. Terence smiled faintly. That was me once, he thought. Dreaming of things I couldn't afford but hoping one day I could. He turned toward the home essentials section, where rows of folded towels and neatly stacked bedding lined the shelves. A middle-aged woman in uniform, her name tag read Carla, was kneeling restocking pillowcases. Her movements were tired but precise. Terence approached slowly. "Excuse me," he said, keeping his voice low. Carla looked up, her eyes soft but weary. "Yes, sir. Can I help you?" Her tone carried no judgment, no impatience, just professionalism. Yeah. Do these sets come in larger sizes? I didn't see a king anywhere." Carla wiped her hands on her apron and stood. "Let me check in the back for you. We don't keep all the sizes out here." Terence nodded. That's what I like to see, he thought, relief trickling in. This is the kind of care I wanted this store to be known for. Carla disappeared into the back. But as he waited, voices drifted toward him from the next aisle, sharp, clipped voices that froze him in place. Two employees stood near a stack of vacuums, half hidden from view. Terence leaned slightly, pretending to study a display while his ears sharpened. "Man, did you see that guy who just walked in?" one whispered. "The one in the hoodie?" The other replied, snickering. "Yeah. Looks like he doesn't belong here at all. Probably just browsing, wasting time. People like that never buy anything." Terence's chest tightened. The words sank deep, sharper than knives. He shifted his weight, gripping the handle of his bag. The second employee chuckled. "Honestly, if I were security, I'd keep an eye on him. He's been hanging around electronics for a while. Feels sketchy." His stomach turned. These weren't just careless words. This was exactly the poison he feared had seeped into the culture. Judgment based on appearance, on skin, on assumptions. For a moment, he wanted to storm around the corner, rip off his cap and shout, "I own this place." But he held himself back. Anger wouldn't reveal the truth. Patience would. Carla returned then, carrying a package in her arms. "Found one king-size set for you, sir," she said kindly. Terence forced a smile, taking the package from her. "Thank you. I appreciate it." But his mind wasn't on the bedding anymore. It was on the venom he'd just heard. As Carla walked away, Terence stayed rooted to the spot, staring blankly at the shelves. A battle raged within him. Part of him wanted to believe this was just two careless employees. A mistake, not the truth. But another part whispered, what if this is happening everywhere? What if the promise you built this company on has been broken? He clenched his fists inside his pockets. For the first time in years, he felt like an outsider in the very place he had created. Maybe it's time to push harder, he thought, to see how deep this rot really goes. He moved into the electronics aisle again. His steps heavier now. This time he picked up a larger box. A sleek new laptop, expensive and clearly valuable. He cradled it in his arms, glancing toward the counter where the same young employee still leaned, scrolling lazily through his phone. Terence walked closer, placing the box deliberately on the counter with a soft thud. The employee glanced up, annoyed at being interrupted. Yeah, the worker muttered, voice flat. Terence kept his tone even. Can you tell me more about this model? I'm not too familiar with the specs. The young man sighed, setting his phone down reluctantly. All the details are on the box. You can read it yourself. Terence froze. The disrespect wasn't loud, but it was clear. Careless, dismissive, unbothered. He leaned in slightly. I'd still like to hear it from you. I mean, you work here, right? The employee smirked. Yeah, I work here. But if you don't understand basic stuff, maybe this isn't the laptop for you. For a heartbeat, the world went silent around Terence. The laughter of children, the beeping registers, the soft hum of air conditioning. It all blurred into a dull roar. All he could hear was the thundering of his own heart. Inside, his pride cracked. Here he was, a man who had given hundreds of people jobs, who had built a company from nothing, being treated as if he were nothing. Terence kept his composure, though his pulse hammered in his chest. He adjusted his cap, hiding his eyes, trying to hold back the storm brewing inside. The young employee leaned back against the counter, folding his arms with a smirk. Look man, if you're not buying, don't waste my time. Other people actually need help. Terence glanced around. The aisles were half empty. No one else waited. Other people. There was no one. The excuse was as thin as paper. But before Terence could respond, the second employee, the one he had overheard mocking him earlier, strolled over, grinning. What's going on here? Nothing, the first replied casually. Just this guy asking questions he doesn't really need answered. Looks like he's just killing time. The second employee's eyes narrowed on Terence. You got money for that laptop. His tone wasn't curious. It was suspicious. Terence met his gaze steadily. I wouldn't be standing here if I didn't. The employee chuckled darkly. People say that all the time. Doesn't mean it's true. Terence could feel other shoppers beginning to glance over. The atmosphere shifted. A quiet unease crept into the space. The second employee tilted his head toward the front. Maybe we should call security. Just in case. Terence's jaw tightened. Security? For what? He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't made a scene. He had done nothing but ask for help, in his own store. Still, the first employee smirked and pulled out his walkie-talkie. Hey Marcus, can you swing by electronics? Got someone acting suspicious down here. Terence's stomach sank. It wasn't the call itself. It was the casualness of it, as if throwing suspicion on him was normal. As if labeling him a threat was easy, natural, expected. Moments later, a tall, broad-shouldered security guard appeared. His black uniform stretched across his chest, and his badge glinted under the store's lights. He approached with measured steps, eyes locked on Terence. What seems to be the problem? Marcus asked, voice firm. The first employee shrugged, gesturing at Terence. This guy's been hanging around for a while. He's picking up expensive stuff but doesn't seem serious about buying. Thought you should keep an eye on him. Terence took a deep breath. He wanted to scream, to reveal his identity, to crush them with the truth. But instead he looked Marcus square in the eye. I came here to shop, Terence said calmly. That's all. Marcus studied him for a moment. His gaze flicked from Terence's worn sneakers to his old canvas bag, then back to his face. There was doubt in his eyes. Not certainty, not aggression, but doubt. And that doubt cut deeper than outright hate. Public humiliation. The second employee stepped closer. His voice louder now, making sure nearby shoppers heard. Sir, if you don't have the money, just say so. No need to waste our time. A ripple of whispers spread. A mother tugged her child closer. An older man shook his head, muttering something under his breath. Terence's face burned. It wasn't just the employees anymore. It was the crowd. Judgment spread like wildfire, fed by suspicion and assumption. He placed the laptop back on the counter, slowly, carefully, as if handling something fragile. His fingers lingered on the box before pulling away. Maybe you're right, Terence said softly, his voice carrying both pain and defiance. Maybe I don't belong here. The words were heavy, and though he said them quietly, they echoed in the silence that followed. Inside, Terence was torn apart. One part of him wanted to rip off the disguise, to show them exactly who he was and watch their arrogance crumble. Another part whispered that this moment, this ugly raw truth, needed to play out. He needed to see it, feel it, endure it so he could understand how deep the problem ran. He clenched his fists at his sides, nails digging into his palms. His breath shook. Marcus, the security guard, finally spoke again. Sir, I'll need you to step aside with me for a moment. The employees smirked, satisfied. They had won, or so they thought. Terence exhaled slowly. This is it. The breaking point. Marcus, the security guard, gestured firmly toward the side hallway that led to the office. His expression wasn't cruel, but it was authoritative, leaving no room for argument. Sir, I just need to ask you a few questions. It won't take long. The first employee smirked triumphantly. The second employee whispered under his breath, just loud enough for Terence to hear. Knew he was trouble. Terence swallowed hard. His throat felt dry, but he forced his voice to remain steady. I told you I came here to shop. That's it. But Marcus didn't waver. Then you won't mind stepping aside with me, right? The eyes of the shoppers burned into Terence's back as he was led away. He could hear the murmurs, the whispers, each one slicing into him like a blade. Probably tried to steal. Doesn't look like he belongs here anyway. Always the same story. Word stung. The cramped security office was lined with shelves of paperwork, a flickering monitor showing security camera feeds, and the hum of an old air conditioner. Marcus closed the door behind them. All right, he said, arms crossed. What's your name? Terence hesitated. For a split second, he considered revealing everything. My name is Terence Johnson. I own this place. Pay your salary. But no, not yet. Not here. He needed to see this through. Terence, he replied simply. Marcus jotted something down on a clipboard. And what were you planning to purchase today? A laptop, Terence answered. His voice was calm, but inside fire roared. Marcus glanced at him, then at his sneakers again, and scribbled another note. The silence stretched. It was suffocating. Just then the office door creaked open. A woman in her late 50s stepped inside, holding a stack of paperwork. She wore a Navy store uniform, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun. Her name tag read, Gloria, Senior Manager. She stopped short when her eyes landed on Terence. Her breath caught. For a moment, the papers slipped slightly in her hands. Mr. Johnson, she whispered, disbelief in her voice. Marcus blinked. Wait, you know him. Gloria's eyes widened with realization. Of course I know him. She set the papers down, straightened her back, and spoke with authority. This is Terence Johnson, the owner of this entire store. And not just this one, the entire chain. The room went silent. Marcus froze, clipboard slipping from his grasp. The owner. His voice cracked, the word barely audible. Terence slowly removed his cap, meeting Marcus's stunned gaze. His expression was steady, but his eyes carried the weight of betrayal. Gloria stepped closer, her tone sharp. Who dared accuse Mr. Johnson of being suspicious? Who humiliated him in front of customers? Marcus stammered. I was just following. But Gloria cut him off. No, you were following bias. You saw a black man in worn shoes and assumed the worst. Shame on you. Terence stood, straightening his shoulders. Let's go, he said quietly. Gloria led the way back out to the sales floor. The employees who had mocked him earlier froze when they saw him walking alongside Gloria. Their smirks vanished instantly. Gloria raised her voice, commanding the attention of everyone nearby. Ladies and gentlemen, this man is not a customer you just mistreated. This man is Mr. Terence Johnson, the owner of this company. A ripple of shock surged through the crowd. Whispers turned into gasps. The two employees turned pale, their mouths opening and closing without words. Terence looked at them steadily. His voice was low, but every syllable carried power. I came here today disguised, to see how my customers are treated. What I saw instead was how you treat people you think don't matter. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Every eye was on him. Terence's voice grew firmer, filled with restrained anger. You judged me by my clothes. You assumed I was poor. You called security on me in my own store. Not because of what I did, but because of what I looked like. The words hung in the air like thunder. Shoppers shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their heads in shame. The first employee stammered. I didn't know. You didn't care to know, Terence shot back. And that's the problem. His eyes scanned the store, his voice reaching not just the employees but every customer within earshot. If you treat me this way, how many others have you humiliated? How many hard-working people walked out of here feeling worthless because of you? The weight of his words pressed down on the entire room. The store was silent. Not a single cashier beeped an item through. No footsteps echoed in the aisles. Every customer, every worker stood frozen, eyes glued to Terence. The two employees who mocked him earlier shifted uncomfortably, their faces pale with dread. Marcus, the security guard, stood stiff, clutching his cap in both hands, sweat dripping down his forehead. Terence took a deep breath, his voice steady but charged with emotion. I didn't come here today to embarrass anyone. I didn't come to make a scene. I came undercover because I wanted to see if my company lived up to the values I built it on. Dignity, fairness, respect. What I saw broke me. He paused, scanning the room. Customers leaned in. Employees' throats tightened. Terence stepped closer to the first employee, the one who mocked his shoes. The young man couldn't meet his gaze. You laughed at me, Terence said quietly. Not because you knew me. Not because I did anything wrong. But because you thought I was beneath you. The man's lips trembled. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, Terence cut in sharply. And that laugh said more about you than it ever did about me. He turned to the second employee. The one who muttered knew he was trouble. Terence's eyes locked on him, unblinking. You looked at me and saw a criminal. Without a word spoken, without a reason given, you decided who I was. That's not just bad customer service. That's prejudice.